also starting captions. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paula Ludwig. I am with the Atlantic Institute, and this is our Cultural Creations class. And today we are going to be doing needle felt 3-inch bird nest with woolly doodles. I have no idea what that is, but I am excited to learn because this right here is what we're, I guess, something like what we're going to make. So it's awesome. It looks awesome. If you are just now joining and haven't done it yet, if you could put where you're from in the chat, and you can send it directly to me if you'd like. We do these free and open to the public and on Zoom here. And by me showing where everybody's coming from, it lets my bosses know that we need to continue doing this because we used to just do things in person. We're not going to do that anymore. Just do in person. We're going to start doing hybrid where we have people doing stuff in person in a city, and then maybe, virtually people can come in and watch. I'm so excited for that. The Atlantic Institute is a nonprofit that promotes positive dialogue. Our vision is of a peaceful world. And by doing that, we feel that introducing people to different cultures, different religions, and educating them about different things is how we do that. And so we do many different programs. I'm going to show you a short 2-minute video on the Atlantic Institute. It is awesome. And then we are going to get on with our class for today. So let me hit the share button.
The Atlantic Institute is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting harmonious coexistence between peoples of various cultures, faiths, and backgrounds. We seek this goal through peaceful dialogue, education initiatives, and community organization. Our dialogue events bring together experts, community and faith leaders, and knowledge seekers to address social issues that affect us all. We feel dialogue is the most important element in peaceful coexistence, so we try and maintain several panel discussions, TED Talk events, and book clubs throughout the year. These events touch on social issues, race relations, and cultural understanding and are a mainstay of our programming. The Atlantic Institute's education events are extremely important to our mission of understanding. We want to promote socially forward critical thinking to students of all ages. To that end, we have developed programs that seek to grow the creative spirit of students and help them think about their communities and the world around them. Our Future Leaders of Dialogue event brings together nominated elite students to learn from each other as well as political and business leaders. Our art and essay contest gives students a theme about important societal issues and allows them to create wonderful works of art and writing while steering their minds towards improving their world. We're always seeking ways to educate youths and adults in order to make a peaceful world for all of us. Our community events are designed to transform neighbors into friends and groups of people into a community. By associating with other nonprofits or by our own initiative, we are always trying to discover new avenues to improve our neighborhoods, places of worship, and community centers. We host cooking demonstrations of food from other cultures, work with various nonprofits to help elevate the work of others, and try to find a way to make the lives of those who are disenfranchised or marginalized better. Building a more peaceful world starts in our backyards, so we are dedicated to improving our communities and associations. The Atlantic Institute is always seeking like-minded volunteers and collaborators. If you would like to learn more, find volunteer opportunities, or just want to chat with our staff, please visit our website at www.atlanticinstitutesc.org or follow us on Facebook. We will never run out of fun, educational, peaceful events, so come join us to help make this world a better place full of understanding and unity.
Okay, I finally found what boosts my metabolism, and it's not.
All right, there we go. So, I am now going to turn this over to our instructor, Kathy, and I want to thank Kathy again for doing this today. And she is going to tell you about herself and what we're doing today. I'm gonna spell it for everyone.
All right, so see, now I have full control of this this class. Hi, my name's Kathy Disbro. I'm a needle felt artist and instructor. I have been needle felting for over 8 years, and I've been teaching it in person and online for a bit over 6 years. So just so you know, this is my company, Doodles. I will be working in when the video is recorded, right? And there'll be information on how to reach me if you want to contact me after this. So what I'm going to be showing you today is how to needle felt a nest, right? So this is a nest all made with wool. There's no sewing, there's no glue. It's all made with stabbing wool with a special barbed needle. So when dealing with wool, right? How I get wool to connect is that every little fiber of wool has tiny little barbs or notches or scales, right? I mean, so if you can envision this, right? Every little fiber, right? And so when I work with wool, right, I've got like, this is called a bat, and all these little fibers all have tiny little notches and barbs in them. And the felting needles that I use also have little tiny notches or barbs in them. I will show you when I go to my camera view. So what happens is every time I stab into the wool, and I'm using sheep wool, every time I stab into the wool, my special barbs are now connecting all the little notches in each fiber together to connect them. So I always say that when I create a three-dimensional object, I am sculpting with wool. And when you're needle felting, you have to think about that, right? Just like clay, you're building using wool as your material as opposed to clay. So I am going to switch to my camera view, to my hands. And I'm going to leave myself up in the little corner up at the top, just so you can keep seeing my lovely face. So what I did was, in this, I'm going to do like a cooking demo. Is I'm going to show you how I start. Then I'm going to like, oh, look, it magically came out of the oven. Just to keep the pace going, to keep this around an hour. But here I just wanted to show you, I will not be showing you how to make eggs. I'll talk about this toward the end. I do have a kit with a video that you can follow along with that does talk about, you basically can follow along with me and do all the steps, and I show you how to make the eggs. But you can make these nests and you can fill them with anything. I've done candy. You could put pine cones, like little pine cones. You could buy plastic eggs, things. Like you can pretty much put anything in this. So with needle felting, you need 3 things. You need the felting needles. You need something to felt onto. I'm using a foam felting surface, but this project's fun and interesting because I have a rice in a sock. And this is how I will be felting my nests to be around it. Why do I need a felting surface? It's because your needle's it's very sharp and it's going to go in. And you don't want to break the tip of the needle or else it won't go into the wool. And of course, what the third thing you need is actual. I'm just putting my other nests aside so I don't knock them off the table. Okay, so in this project, I'm going to be using this brown batting. It's been cleaned, but it's still got little vegetation in it. It's got like little fibers. And this wool, the sheet would have had some gray fibers as well as the brown. So that's what you're seeing when they carded the wool. That's a whole nother video that we can do, is talk about wool and washing it and carding it. So when I do the nests, I'm aiming for a 3-inch round nest, so that this area be about 3 to 3.5 inches all the way around. And you can see it is a vessel. I am not wet felting this. If any of you have wet felted, you could wet felt a nest, but I'm showing you needle felting. Again, needle felting using a needle to join the fibers, whereas wet felting you'd be using heat agitation to. So when I go to create my, my phone is distracting me, it keeps lighting up. So what I do is I'm gonna lay out my wool about 2 hand lengths. And you know, I'm gonna shut my face off for right now. Just so that I can do this first step. So what I do is I just pull wool off my batting. So I'm just gently pulling wool off my batting here. And I'm laying it onto my felting surface. I like to use foam pads for felting surface. And because they're pretty durable, the one I'm using now is very used. Doing the nests, it can be a little messy as far as like if your fiber has little bits in it. You don't have to use you might have cleaner wool, but I like to, it's a nest, right? Bird nests are kind of messy and stuff, so I don't really mind having little extra bits in. So what I do is I lay out, I apologize, like I try to keep things like, you might, when I put my hands down, the wool will get a little bit dark, but see as soon as I take my hands off. So what I've done is I have laid out my wool 2 hand widths apart. I would say I have a pretty standard sized hand. So it's just a good guide, and top to bottom, it's about the width, right? It's about the same as my hand. Now I'm probably going to wind up adding more wool to this after I'm done with this part. But I already can feel there's a little bit of a divot there. I'm just going to lay a little piece of wool on top of that. I like to make this a little bit thick to start with, so I'm just laying some of the wool down. Now, if you have one of my felting kits, because I have more than just the nest, I give you single needles. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just combining. I just want to connect some of these fibers together so that they stay together when I do my next step. But I use these tools. They are multi-needle tools. They are a Clover brand. You can find them, most fiber stores online have them, or Amazon, which might be the easiest for worldwide. So right now I'm using a 5-needle punch tool. These are Clover brands. And Clover does a lot of sewing and things like that, so you might be familiar with it already. So all I've done is I just wanted to get this wool so it's now connecting a bit more than when I just laid it on. Okay, so for this particular project, what I want to do is in order to get the wool to stick and start sculpting with it, right? Because my goal is to have something like this. I'm going to fold over maybe about a 1/2 inch to actually could be about 1 inch. I just fold the first part over and I just tack that down. In this case, I personally would be using the 3-needle tool, and it just helps me stab faster. Because instead of stabbing with just 1 needle, now I'm using 3, and it's going to help me dense this up faster. So I just folded one part down. Now I'm going to fold another part down. These are looking like they're probably more like 1 inch that's being folded down. So I'm going to fold it down, and now I'm going to stab this. And sometimes I find that I really do need to just use 1 needle. There are about 15 to like 20 felting needles. Again, we could spend a whole session with me talking about the different felting needles. I will be recording a video to talk about felting needles that will be available on my YouTube channel. I have two different needles. I have two single needles here, as well as these. If you saw me shifting things around, one got covered by my phone. So now what I have is I just have this. Now I have two pieces folded down. The reason that I'm folding it is I'm stacking all those individual layers on top of each other, so that when I stab through the layers, I'm connecting all of these layers together. So all the individual fibers are now starting to connect together, right? So I gave it some stabs and it's not coming apart at this point, but it's still pretty loose, right? It's pretty bendy still. So now I'm going to take my trusty rice sock. So what I do is I took an old sock that the heel blew out on, and I filled it with basically like probably a good cup of rice, and then I tied it, and I just left like there's like a little bit of wiggle room in here, so you don't have to have it completely tight, but this way I can move the rice around. Yes, uncooked. Happened to see that comment. Yeah, so uncooked rice, right? If you want, what it is that the rice is going to give something for your needle to go through, but it's going to make this firm enough that you can felt onto. There is a felting artist who sells a lot of supplies in the United States, and her name is Serafina Fiber Art. No, the rice doesn't damage the needles. So it's Serafina Fiber Art, and she uses a like a burlap with rice in it. And I've seen other people use burlap with rice in it, like other companies. So there's all these different kinds of companies. There's all different ways that you can felt. The sock is like a really good, easy one, because we probably all have socks that have that need to be recycled in some capacity. So what I want to do is I'm not going to wrap it all the way down. I just want to have something to wrap around, and this is going to help me get that the circular, like to get the size that I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold one side around, and I'm not like pulling super tight, but you do want to try to get these fibers closer together. So I've laid this on. I'm going to take this piece, and now I'm going to fold it all the way around, but I want to be able to start connecting the fibers I folded over. So I'm going to start stabbing them together, and I want to make sure that this part's connected. So here is my loose part. So I'm going to fold that. Again, if you have a single needle, it'll work. You'll just take a bit longer to do this project. But if you do happen to have this tool, or you decide you want to do a lot of felting, having multi-needle tools is very beneficial. I have seen, there are other companies that sell these tools. I hope Michaels doesn't watch this. I find the Michaels tools to be a bit cheap. I tried, someone lent me one, and I broke the needles in like the first shot, where I find the Clover needles are very durable, or more durable, I should say. You got to be careful, because when you're stabbing into something, you have to pull it out in the same direction you stab in. If I stab this in, I did this morning, and I tilt it up, and sometimes the little sticks might make it a little firmer. It broke one of my needles. So you do want to be careful anytime. So like what I mean is, like, so see, I'm sideways stabbing. If I tilt it up, I already can feel that my needle might break. Okay, so once I stab just around, what I'm doing is I'm connecting these fibers. I don't need to worry about the ones that don't have another piece on. This is just where I folded it over. Now I'm folding one side, and then I'm folding the other side, right? So like I have, like, it looks like crazy hair right now. So I'm folding one side down, and I'm folding the other. And what I'm doing is I'm taking my finger, I always call this petting the cat or like petting the dog, right? I'm gently taking my hand and I'm pulling the fibers tightly to my rice sock. And then I'm going to again do the same. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the fibers and I'm holding them so that when I start to stab, I'm going to get a better shape, and I'm holding the fibers closer together so they're going to stay together a little more firmly and sculpted. I do have a felting on my YouTube channel. So under Woolly Doodles, Woolly with 2 L's. It's a very British way of spelling things. I'm originally from the US, but everything in Canada is British. So I do currently live in Southern Ontario. I'm part of the Greater Toronto area, but I'm at the Golden Horseshoe of Lake Ontario. So not far, about an hour and so from Buffalo and Niagara Falls. A nice spot to be. My family still lives in the US, so I often go over. Okay. All right, so right now I've got a very loose piece for my nest, and you can see where my seed is. It's got quite a deep cavity right now, and it's very like, right, so if I press it, see, it's very soft, and I want it to be firmer, right? So what I would be doing is I will be adding a little bit more wool in here, but first I'm going to hold my nest sideways. I'm just going to connect these fibers again around the edge, right? See how these are two pieces that I folded over. And I'm just trying to start firming this up and connecting these fibers together, because the idea is that I want to sculpt this so it's a firm shape, because I'm like, where is my, so this is my,
Uh-oh. Kathy, we've lost you.
okay. I hit something on my camera. Sorry about that. Can everyone hear me?
We can now, yes.
Okay, yeah, you know what, I hit my camera and it didn't like that. Oh, so what I did is prepare for this, right? So this is like what we're going for, and this is before I would add feathers and things like that, right? So this is pretty firm, and I made this one pretty thick. So right, you can see that right now, I'm not quite at that stage yet. So I have to keep working on it, and like it's very thin right here. So what I started to do, this is very interesting, is I've already got a bit of a cup shape though, right? It's not falling apart at this point. So what I start to do is I start to stab with nothing underneath it, but I squeeze it together. So I don't know if you can see me squeezing it together. So what I'm doing is I have a single needle right now, but if you're careful, I can use this, but I'm not stabbing toward my hand. I'm actually stabbing it slightly diagonally down, and you can see it's collapsing as I'm stabbing it, which means I want to add more wool inside, right? Because I can feel when I put my finger inside that it needs more wool. So I'm going to take wool. Now at this point, it's up to you, right? Like if you feel like you don't need a large piece, I might start putting small pieces in and building up. So I know that right here, I have a thin piece. So I'm going to start adding more wool to this. Right? So this is like just to help me start to build my nest. And I can stab along the edge to shrink it down a bit. Again, I'm going for something that's about 2 inches tall and about 3 to 3.5 inches of like a radius right all the way across. Does anyone have any questions? While I like to talk a lot, so. Paul is my reader for the question. Because now I'm not even looking up, I'm looking down to make sure like I don't stab myself with these needles.
No questions right now.
Okay. I get very excited too, so it's all over the place.
They want to know what the website is again.
Okay, so my company's name is Woolly, Woolly, Doodles, Doodles. If you misspell woolly, you can still get to my website.
And they want to
So-
know if this is Karakul wool.
What kind of wool?
I'm going to spell it. Karakul.
Paracool wool.
This is natural off the sheep. It's probably bird chaff.
Okay.
I don't know what paracool is. I've never even heard of it. I don't use any synthetic fibers. I can use alpaca. Alpaca is a harder wool to felt with, and its microns are a bit, it's a little more slick. I would not waste good merino wool on this project. I usually tend to use core wool. I like to buy brown core wool. There are different breeds of brown sheep. If you purchase my kit, I use only Ontario. I source all Ontario wool. So I have some local farmers that I work with, and they supply me with the brown wool. You know, when you get a little nutty about needle felting, you eventually start to buy fleece and wash your own. I haven't quite gone to buying a full fleece yet, but you don't, like I said, you don't need to worry about it being super clean. Now this nest, it's got all these bits. This one could be a Shetland, or it could be Icelandic. Now Icelandic sheep tend to have some nice fine fibers, and then they have these long strips, like long gray strips. And I hate it because the strips stand out, but you could easily they would make nice nests, because right, it's the, you want it to be different colors, but then by the time you're done, said and done, you can't even really see what you put on there because I loaded up with them. Is there any other questions? What I'm doing right now isn't just, again, what I showed you earlier. I'm doing this because I'm trying to get the sides in more, and I want this to dense up. So by slightly squeezing and me stabbing it toward the center, it's firming up all the way around, right? So now I'm already can feel that my nest is firmer, and you can still see where the seam is. So if you want to cover up seams, like say you're like, well, Kathy, I'm going to make a nest that I'm not going to be loading it with blocks like you did, because I want it to be more just a simple brown nest. So what I'm going to do is, if I want to cover that seam, I'm just pulling a thin piece, or you could get a thicker piece depending, and I'm just going to tack that on. That'll cover up that seam. If you want to make sure you can't see seams in any of your needle felting, what I do is, because this is batting, I'm just gently pulling all the little fibers on the edges, and that'll blend in with the other fibers, right? So if I lay this on like this, right now, I'm not only covering up the seam, but I'm not going to have a new seam because all these fibers are blending in with the other fibers. And if you stab into the direction that the fibers are going in, that'll help blend them in better as well. Are there any more questions? No questions, Paula?
Oops, sorry, I forgot to turn my mic off. Will you be at the Fiber Festival in Ontario this year?
Well, Woolstock.
I don't know. The question was FIBRE festivals in Ontario this year.
Well,
Also, they also put in here the description of the type of wool they were asking about. So you might want to read the chat later. It's a Russian kind of wool.
all right. So I have never used it. I can't say that I'm a 100% a wool expert on wools. I'm still learning about microns. I would say that if the wool costs you, if the wool costs you a lot of money, I would not use it. Right, because again, you're going to cover most of it up. Now, if you wanted to have a really nice soft nest, I would say I would put the nicer wool on the outside, right? So in other words, lay it on over the top of this. So I could keep going. I'm going to, for time's sake, I'm going to do my cooking demonstration because I could keep working on this for probably another 20 minutes. But ta-da! Look at that. So fast.
The magic oven.
The magic oven. So now what I do is, this is the stage where I have these wool locks, right? And wool locks, all right, so I often have people ask me, how do you curl them? This is naturally off the sheep. This is the most expensive part of the sheep, right? You'll pay a lot more for locks than any of the other wool products, right? And so these my friend I buy from calls these the cheaper locks. They're good for nests because see, they already have like sticks and twigs in them, right? Like this is straw, basically. This is the vegetation. And for those who are from Ontario, apparently Canadian sheep are dirtier than like American and English. And when I say dirtier, it's apparently how they're wintered. I guess they're wintered in a lot of with a lot of hay and straw, and that's what they eat. And some farms, I have a farm and they have alpaca, they have a pony, and they have sheep, and the pony likes to throw all the hay all over the other animals. So hence why they have more vegetation is what they call it. So when it comes to working with blocks, again, I will also be recording, or in the next few months, I will be recording not only a needles video, but I will be recording a locks video, how to properly attach locks. As you can see, mine aren't all that great. Like they're, you know, they're kind of fuzzy, but it doesn't matter because I'm putting them on a nest, and I just want to have the bits and pieces of the little lighter colors sticking off at the top, right, and give it some texture before I add these. So I usually have a pair of scissors with me and tweezers when I'm dealing with blocks. So what happens is when you start pulling the fibers apart, if you pull too much, you're going to wind up with this. And you want to keep that lock look, right? You want those curls. The reason the tips are lighter than the base is because of the sun. They're sun-kissed. This is the sun bleaching the tips of the wool. So for those of you who want to buy beautiful white locks and they have yellow tips, that is just white wool, white sheep, white wool turns yellow, and the brown wools get more of a tan color. And same with the gray will get a little bit more of a white. So what I'm doing is this is, I believe this might be bird shaft or something. I'm not sure what the wool is. Don't quote me on this. Can we just delete that from the recording? So if I'm having trouble pulling a lock apart, I will just cut it because I want to spread it apart. If you're working with locks, I'll talk more about this when I show you, when I add some of the colors on here. So what I'm doing right now is I like, this is really nice. This little piece here, I really like. So I'm gonna lay it on here. I'm going to maybe spread out a little bit of the base, so I have a little bit more to connect to it, but I'm laying it where a lot of these little tips are gonna stay more toward the top. Now you can use a single needle, or you could use one of these tools. I tend to take one of the needles out and use it with just the two needles. I find that it gives me a little bit more control. And so I can just randomly tack these on. So what I'm say random is that I could just tack it all on and have it all at the top, but I've just slightly turned this lock and I'm stabbing it at the base, leaving the tips alone. So I'm manipulating by where I'm stabbing, I'm manipulating how these little tan tips are going to stay on here. And I random stab. I'm not like like when you're eating a corn on the cob and you go straight across or anything like that. I like to do the random stabbing. And you can see how my nest is still a bit bendy, but that's okay. It'll start to firm up more as I stab. Another thing I can do is I can tack this piece down and I can stab a little here, stab there, and see how I'm creating a curvy block on there. And that could be quite nice and add some texture. In the case of like this piece, you see, I'm like trying to pull on this and it's not pulling apart. That's why as soon as I just give it a snip, I can pull the base apart. And then I can lay this on here and see I already got the vegetation. So I'm gonna lay a little bit of the bottom part down just where it curves underneath and start tacking this on. Now this particular wool is definitely a little more shiny and slick than the other wool. So my guess would be is this is some sort of blue-faced Leicester or border, sorry, blue-faced Leicester or border Leicester, which have smaller curls. That's my guess. Again, I'm not a wool expert. I'm constantly learning about wool, and now that I'm hanging out with more wool farmers, I'm getting to know a lot more about the different types of sheep. And again, like I think there was someone from the UK. Your sheep are probably, you might have a lot more variety than say we have in Ontario, right? Dorset's a pretty popular sheep in Ontario. Lincoln, the Leicesters, the blue-faced, border-faced Leicesters. Then there's a lot of crossbreeds, Romney. There's a lot of Romney sheep here where I live. And I have the benefit of living near a lot of the farms and stuff. I'm not in farmland, but I have pleasure to be nearby. So you can see, like here, I've got like a pretty tough piece. I'm just going to pull a little bit apart so I can leave this part nice and curly, and this part I can just lay it on. And you could just have like tons of fun adding this on. And I like that it's got these little sticks and bits because it just gives it more texture and a little more personality. It's a little messy, so always have a vacuum ready to go. So like you know, when I needle felt, so I have these two needles. Without going too deep into the needles, a 36 triangle needle, which so I should stress that these are color coded to a company in Ontario called fibercraft.ca. Fiber spelled R-E, English spelling. Even though we're so close to the US, everything's spelled very in the English style. So color, O-U-R, check, Q-U-E. I always have to flip-flop between the two depending on who I'm chatting with. If I'm talking to my parents or I'm texting them, I always have to make sure I spell it the right way. So as you can see, I can keep going with this. Again, for time's sake, you can have a lot of fun just doing this. I will add locks inside out, right? So I will stab some on the inside. I always tend to leave the little curly bits toward the top, but when you're working like all the way around, you can have some curly bits all around the nest. I usually don't bother doing a lot of detailing on the bottom or in the inside as far as the little locks that I, and I can feel, mine's not as, see, it's not as floppy as it was as I'm pressing on it, right? So as I'm adding these, it's firming up my nest even more. And you can always keep adjusting and stabbing down. And then I will flip it over and try to start flatten the bottom so that it will sit on a table, right? You want the bottom to be flat enough that it'll sit on the table. Does anyone have any questions before I show you how I add the colorful blocks on? And we'll talk a little bit more about blocks. Any questions?
Nope, I think we're good.
So my friend dyes these, look how beautiful they are, all the varying colors. And she does this in the dyeing process where she drops the different dye colors. When she puts the fiber in, it picks up depending on where, like it's like she doesn't mix it up. She just has all these different colors in as she throws them in the dye bath, right? So it's not like she dips some of them in and that kind of thing. Now, Serafina Fiber Art for my US people. She also, they really do some beautiful block dyeing as well. So anyway, so here I've got like some different, well, and right, so for those of you who decide you really love making nests and you want to do more with it, look at this is what you get sometimes. Look at this, it's all like, what a mess, right? Why didn't it all come, you know, all loose and beautiful and easy to pull apart, right? Like this one, it's like, oh, look, I can just, oh, so easy and it's still staying intact. So this is what I was talking about, is when you're working with it, if I start pulling on this, I'm going to pull these apart and I'm going to not keep that nice little lock. But they do make nice nest blocks because I can manipulate them as I'm adding them on. And I can have some parts that are fuzzy, right? And some parts that stick out and are lumpy. And again, you don't need a lot. I have, look at all the different colors I have on this one. You know, so I don't have, like you say, you have leftovers from another project, right? So here's another nest. This was the first nest I made. So I didn't even put stuff on the bottom side. I just had it all coming around the top, and they're all different colors, but it gives it a lot of personality. And now this is Lincoln. And as it gets handled, it does start to fuzz up a little bit, where I find the border lysters don't seem to as much. And this is the nest I made as part of the kit that I made, right? So this is the nest that I did in my kit demo. And again, look at all the different colors, and look how I've left all the like brown pieces all chunked out, and I really used the texturing, and I did put some on the inside as well. See, so this is as much or as little as you want to do with this, but you can have a lot of fun. I really like making the nests because of the free. So when you're working with the locks, I will use the scissors to cut apart this, what I call the spider webs, right? So again, this is Lincoln wool. It's shiny, but it does tend to pull apart easily. So I'll give gentle tugs, and then I will give some small snips to pull it apart, right? And then again, here I have, hey, that worked. And sometimes if it doesn't come apart like what I was showing you a little bit earlier, like if I'm pulling on this and I'm pulling it where I'm pulling it close to where I want it to pull, so I'm protecting the locks on the other side. But if it doesn't do that, just a little snip of the scissors, and now I'm starting to get it to be more what I want, right? And again, with the Lincoln, I can gently pull some of these locks, got a little curly probably in the dyeing process, but now by pulling that apart, when I go to lay it onto my nest, I have all these little different pieces I can now start to tack on, right? And it's not all in one clump, right? So I'm able to randomly start to, right? So I'm gonna give a little stab here. I did a quick look up and saw someone asking about dropping blood on your white wool. I think your only bet is to just try to pull it off. So take your tweezers and just gently start pulling that off, or just make it part of your design. I find, me personally, and now I don't have any blood issues. I coagulate very easily. Oh yeah, let me put my face back up again. Yeah, you want to remember what I look like, right? So if you need blood thinners and stuff, you probably will bleed a little longer than I do, but I tend to bleed for maybe 30 seconds. And I still stab myself, by the way. So I stop felting, wait a minute, take a little tissue, hold it on there, and I stop bleeding. Because it's such a small, the needle is so just a quick, it won't bleed for very, very long. I'm trying to see, can we see? Come on, camera, zoom in. No. All right, you'll have to watch my needle felting 101 video on my YouTube channel, which is also Woolly Doodles. You can also access that on my website and any of the tutorials. I have a few free tutorials on as well, and I'll be adding more over the next year. Keep going. I love educating. So right, so can you see, like, I'm able to like add it on, and I can leave it a little. Got too many locks on my pad. They're sticking to my hand. Right, so now I have it in different spots, and I've left it hanging out if I want to, right? Like, so for texture, or I could tack it down, right? So see, I can maybe stab this here and there, and it still maintains a bit of a lock, but it's more attached to the nest. And then I could always come in and I can always add a little more brown. So say I feel like I overdid it with the color, I could always add a little more brown in here, right? I could add another brown lock. I could thin out some brown and lay that in there, right? If I want to give a little more interest to this. And again, I usually try to balance everything. So like I might add a green lock here, right? And I grab a different kind, right? You could add, I could add a lock here in the center. Right? So I could stab on the inside, right? And have a little something on the inside. Something I didn't bring out is I've made some nests where if you have leftover, like say your spinner or a weaver, or you use wool yarn, and maybe you have leftover pieces, you could wrap that around before adding the locks. I put some in the center, right? Because it's a bird's nest, right? They might add weird things. You don't know what they're going to add, right? And I've also, I mean, you could put colors in here as well. I like using the locks for the colors just because, again, it gives it some interest. But right, so there's so many things that you can do. So that's pretty much how I add the color locks on, right? So again, like a cooking show, what? Where did this come from? So is there any questions that came up while I was showing that part? Or anything anyone wants me to repeat before I show you about adding feathers and sticks and things?
They have a question. Do you use a wool roving?
I don't use roving for nests because roving, you're spending your money on it and it's more of a top coat and you're going to need more of it to dense it up, right? Because it's stringy and it's all in one direction. Right? So for those who don't know what roving is, I'm using batting. This is wool batting, right? And batting is just like quilt batting. It's all crisscross, right? It's like all the fibers are already all over the place, right? They're crazy, and batting comes in sheets. So see how I'm able to pull that apart, right? So it comes in sheets. And so all these crisscrossed fibers will connect together way better than roving. I use roving for particular things, and you could use roving as a top coat. Say you want to have more of like a circular pattern on your nest, like so, like maybe you want to see like the lines going around, and I would just add a thin layer on after. Because we're making nests, because you're going to be covering up the wool, I always recommend buying, it's called core batting, core wool. There's a place in Alberta that I buy, it's called chunky core roving. Roving can be used in the term of it comes in a rope, and they've carded the wool in one direction, but the chunky core roving that comes from Custom Woolen Mills, they spell woolen with one L, is it's still a bat, but it's in a rope. Right, it's in like a tube, right? It comes like this, right? It looks like basically a rope like this, and I tend to pull it apart like that when I use it. I'll pull it into smaller pieces to use. Does that answer your question? Who asked that? So again, core wool should be cheaper than like, so a lot of wool that I use, say in my felt paintings, I've got a couple like my chickadee, and I've got a couple paintings behind me, right there in frames. I like to use batting for these kinds of projects because the roving, they're very long fibers, and I cut them. Once you cut the ends, it becomes blunt, and it becomes a little bit harder to get those fibers to connect into the wool sheet that I'm using. When it's very random and crisscrossed, right? Like all these, like, it's very random. They seem to connect better together as well. But honestly, for this, I would say like contact your local fiber store, just buy core in brown. If you don't have brown and you only have access to white, but you do have access to brown, batting or even roving, you can cover it up with that, right? You can make your nest in the white wool and then afterwards cover up with the brown. And if you can get hold of brown locks, I would recommend that as well, right? Like if you can get hold of these from a fiber, if you can't find those, then you can buy dyed brown locks. You could use those as well, but a lot of times it's not like a natural brown. So I hope that helps with some explanation on some of that. Is there anything else before I show adding feathers and stuff?
Nope.
So I keep hitting my camera. Okay, so I grabbed a couple of these things. These are findings from outside. So this is the maple keys, right? So all the little maple keys would have been hanging off this. And I really like how it's got this weird, like little crazy pattern. What I've discovered though is, so see, I sell at markets when I make the nests, they do not transport well. They will break off, right? So if you're creating this for yourself and it's going to sit on a shelf and it's not going to be handled a lot, by all means, you could use something like this. But if you feel like it's going to be, people are going to be touching it, or you're going to be selling these, or you're going to give them as a gift and you're worried they might snap in transport, I wouldn't necessarily work with that. But if you were to use one, I would attach it like this, right? And so what you could do is, if you've got, like, I could pull these wool locks back and then cover it over, right? I would definitely get some of my base wool. Oops. See, it fell on the floor. What is that? What I would do is, and see, all right, so why am I doing this at this point and not before? One, because you're going to be handling it a lot when you're adding all the locks on. Two, personally, as an artist, I like to see where it might fit. So if you're going to add sticks and twigs, right, I would take some of my batting wool, and I would want this to intertwine so it stays connected. Now, as I'm stabbing this on, someone had asked earlier, would the rice damage my needles? No, the rice should not damage your needles, but the stick might, depending on how firm your stick is. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just stabbing around the stick. I can see where it is. And I'm establishing and I'm attaching it on. I'm bringing my fibers around, right, around the stick. I want to try to connect this as close to the stick as I can in different spots so that it stays connected. And it might be a little bit wobbly, but it's now on there, right? But now I'm going to take this block that I had on and I want to stab it around and help me connect the stick. Now I'm hitting the stick. I'm not going in, I'm not going crazy, I'm not going fast. Be very, very methodical and slow at this stage. But now I can cover up some of the base of the stick by tacking around the stick. Right? And so that's on there pretty good now. I will not be leaving this on mine, but for now, because I already can feel like this one's breaking a bit. You could glue these back on. You could glue this on, right? I'm showing you things on how to just needle felt on its own, but you could glue things on if they're not staying on. Okay, so this is not really going to work, but I brought it out so you can see, like, so I'm just going to snap off this piece, and I could attach this on by wrapping some wool around it, right? And then I could have this little stick on here, right? Or I could, it won't bend. If you had, like, you could use, say, pine needles that might bend around to give it some texture. Maybe you've got a thinner twig, right? And you could put that on. And again, I would use some of your core wool to attach that on, and then you could take a lock after and cover that up, and it'll stay connected on. It might slide a little bit, but if you stab it on enough, it should stay connected. And again, worst comes to worst, the glue that I use for gluing on pins and eyes, if you make something with glass eyes, it's super glue gel is what you want. Right? You want some form of super glue gel. It's the same glue you would use to put ceramics together. Because what happens is that glue has all these little, it'll go into the pores. And I just find it really sticks nicely on with wool. It works well with wool. Same with whiskers. So my lion behind me has horsehair for whiskers. And you just put a little bit of blob of the clear gel glue and it'll help keep it from sliding around. Again, I don't typically use glue in my felting projects unless I have. So last but not least are feathers. So I brought a few feathers over just to kind of show you. I didn't bring any of my Ontario feathers. So these are chicken feathers from my friend's farm. And I told her I want more of these stripy ones. She's got all different chickens. You buy the eggs from her and they're all different colors, which is fun. And I'm 99% sure these are goose feathers. So we have a lot of Canadian geese. I'm between two cemeteries, so I walk in cemeteries a lot. And in the spring, I think they might be molting. There wasn't any goose poop, which is what you have to worry about with goose feathers. And it was all the downy. And they must have just pulled all the downy out. Maybe it was their winter downy, and it was just everywhere. And I collected it for days, right? But it's white. but I'm getting into dyeing wool, so I could probably dye these different colors, right, if I wanted to. And again, these are also chicken feathers, right? So these are my colorful. You can see how I added on. I usually do like a couple feathers one side, a couple on the other, maybe 3, and then I just had a random feather, right? So that's how I added those on. These are the same feathers. These I got from Michael's. They're probably quail or turkey feathers. And I just added a few on to this nest. This is my original, the very first nest I made. And the other ones don't have on it, right? So again, if I want to add feathers, so if you didn't want, so this one has little feathers on it. Like there's a little feather on it. I could pull that off and use it in a different spot. So I could lay the whole feather on, or I could cut some of the feather, and I'll just show you. So this is a dyed feather, right? So this is a brown dyed feather, and I always find it way too large. So oftentimes I'll just cut the feather. You'll get lots of little bits coming off of it where you cut it, and it's messy. But now I got a smaller piece. I'm gonna, so I hope everyone here's familiar with Muppets. This reminds me of Muppet hair, which they used feathers. So again, to add the feathers, I'll show you with the long feather. I'll oftentimes try to see if I can stick it through. Oh, sorry. I'll try to stick it through the locks that I already laid on. So I'll just give a little tug to see if I can create a hole. For those of you who sew, you might, or not sew. So seam ripper is for sewing people. And the seam ripper, you could use that to pull pieces off, say you didn't like something. I usually more when you're doing critters and things like felting critters. There's something called an awl tool, AWL, that you could use to stab through, and then I'll help get your feather through. But it came through. And what I'm going to do is it came through, and I can stab around here to connect that on, and I'll rotate my feather to make sure that it's sticking up where I want it to stick up, right? And I can slide this in and out, see, so I can put where I want it. And I can add, say, a little bit of wool here to cover that up. And as I just stab myself. If I stab along the feather as well, I can help get the feather to stay in, right? So it's about stabbing along the feather, and a finer needle will help you, right? So see, I'm stabbing into the base and getting those feathers in, and this feather, it won't come out now. And then I could add that little feather back in. I could put this fancy feather and stab that in as well. And this one I would definitely, feathers everywhere. I would be stabbing it at the base. Sorry, I'll be stabbing it at the base because this one doesn't have a long, right? Remember I cut it, and I would definitely add a little bit of wool. I would definitely add a little bit of wool at the base as well to help connect it in. Right, so that it would stay open. And again, you can do that anywhere on. So that is my quick tutorial on felting a nest. As I said, I do have a kit that comes with all the wool, comes with the locks, the needles, the feathers, you know, and some wool to do the eggs. And of course, eggs are up to you, right? With eggs, because you could do blue eggs, or you could do white eggs, or gray eggs, or you can get really fancy and like cardinal eggs have like blue with like little brown on it and stuff like that, right? And again, I'm not showing eggs today, but I always create 3, and I just got feather all over it. So, right, but I usually put them into the nest. And as I said, you could put anything inside the nest. You could make a bird that sits in the nest if you could make felt birds, but definitely go to my website, take a look at my other videos, and you can email me at any time with questions. My email is Kathy@woollydoodles.com. If you go to my website, you just fill out a form. And here's I am on social media. There's my little sheet,
Aw.
which is also a kit.
Hey,
I'm not trying to be pushy on the kids. I'm just letting you know there are other kits, and there will be more kits to come. The nest was my latest one that I just did recently to help sell Ontario wool and promote Ontario wool. And for those who live in Southern Ontario, I do teach in person. And I do offer usually at least 2 online classes. I do have an online landscape class coming up, but for if you're watching this 3 years from when we recorded it, I do teach online and in person. And you can contact me at any time. Follow me on YouTube, follow me on social media, and you'll know what I'll be doing. Like I said, I'll be doing some more free tutorials. I have a starter kit I'd like to do, and I have some friends like Fibercraft and local wool places, and they want to have some videos or something to go along with starter kits. So for those watching this in 2023, there's more to come. For those maybe 2025, maybe there's tons and there's still more to come.
can you hold the nest up so we can see it from the side? Kind of,
Yeah,
like the
okay.
picture behind me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to my face.
There we
Okay,
go.
so here is
Oh, awesome.
the nest with the Ontario wool, the one I was showing with the eggs. So this is, right, there's the bottom on the side. So if I hold it in my hand, I know my hand
Awesome.
looks huge, but right. The nest I was working on, sorry, the nests I was working on. So this is the one where I was adding the little pieces.
Yes.
And this one's pretty much to the size. Like once you start adding sticks and stuff, you're not going to want to flip it upside down, right? This is the one that may be in your picture. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Where I didn't put anything under. This one was my first nest that I made, and I made it flatter, so it's a little bit shorter. Right, it's shorter than.
yes.
This is the sock that I was talking about, right? So, raw rice, cheap rice, go with cheap, though this may be brown rice because it may have been all I had at the time. And this is the one that I started, like this is the one I was demoing.
Awesome.
I try to like pull my, there we go, I got my, can you see I got brighter? I'm trying to pull my lighting over so you can see it better. And I'm gonna drop
So
that.
this
Yes.
video will be out on our Atlantic Institute YouTube channel. Next week, I have a volunteer who loads stuff for me. She has kits and other stuff available on her website. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Also, the Atlantic Institute, we record almost everything now. We have over 170 videos on our YouTube channel. So go check out what else we have there. Please go and check out, it's Woolly Doodles.
Doodles, yep, plural. So it's Woolly Doodles, like I doodle.
Yes.
Out of wool.
Go check out Woolly Doodles and see what she has. I'm going to, I know I want to see some of those amazing ideas. And just let us know if you have any ideas that you would like to possibly see. I can't make them all reality, but I do like to try to do some. So we are getting ready to start scheduling next year's classes. So, and they're not all crafting stuff. There is cooking demos, interfaith stuff, and educational stuff. And if you have teenagers, we are doing a series called Life Skills for Teens, and they are being recorded as well and out there. So I want to thank everyone. Kathy, thank you very, very much. Anybody have any more questions? Oh, they're loving your projects behind you. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yes, yes, they're the labor of love, these two. So.
All right, I am going to end the recording now. Where is it? Stop recording.